The Whisper in the Void. The storm outside Darren's barracks did not fade with the dawn. It only shifted, like a living creature slithering across the sky. The clouds churned in unnatural spirals, and violet cracks of lightning flickered silently across the horizon. Men said it was a warp-charged anomaly caused by distant cult activity. Command dismissed the rumors with threats of discipline, but Darren knew better. Because the storm spoke. Not loudly, not violently, no. Chaos rarely began with screams. It began with softness, curling into the cracks in a man's soul like smoke slipping under a door. As Darren sat on his cot, rubbing his temples, the whisper returned. "You're tired, Darren. You've carried too much for too long. Let me help." He froze. His breath caught in his chest. It wasn't like hearing a sound. It was like the thought had formed in his mind without his permission. Smooth, familiar, and intrusive all at once. He shut his eyes. This is stress, he told himself. Exhaustion, fatigue. But the whisper, a sound that wasn't quite sound. "You think this is madness? No, child. Madness is what you've been living in all your life." Darren's hands trembled. He clenched his fists until his nails dug into his palms. "Shut up," he hissed under his breath. His bunkmate Varn glanced over. "You all right? You look sick." Darren forced a nod. "Just couldn't sleep." Varn shrugged sympathetically. "Nobody can sleep in this storm. I swear it feels like it's staring down at us." Darren's heart thudded. It wasn't the storm staring. It was the thing inside it. The first pull. The next march out to the front lines was a blur. The ground was muddy, the air thick with static discharge. Every once in a while, a soldier's hair stood on end from stray warp energy drifting across the plains. They were ordered to avoid the purple mist pooling in low areas, because anything the warp touched became unreliable. Sometimes boots melted. Sometimes time slipped forward without warning. Sometimes people disappeared. Darren kept his eyes forward, forcing himself to ignore the subtle tugging sensation at the back of his mind. The whisper was patient now, as if it knew he was struggling. "You want to understand? Let me show you." He gritted his teeth. "Get out of my head." Varn glanced back. "Did you say something?" "No," Darren growled. "Just talking to myself." Varn gave a wry smile. "If you start answering yourself, let me know so I can report you." A joke. A harmless joke. But Darren felt a flash of irritation so sharp it stole his breath. His fingers twitched involuntarily, curling, lengthening, then snapping back to normal before he consciously registered the sensation. He stumbled. "Hey!" Varn grabbed his arm before he fell. "You really are sick." Darren pulled away too quickly. "I said I'm fine." The whisper approvingly. "Good. Don't let them question you. Don't let them see you changing." His blood ran cold. How did it know? The shadow in the rain. By the time they reached the ruined settlement where they were ordered to fortify a forward position, the rain had turned black. Not dirty, not muddy, black, like ink diluted in water. The drops left no stains. They evaporated too quickly for that. But each drop felt warm. Darren wiped his face, staring at the smear on his glove. It evaporated into vapor, vanishing like breath on cold glass. Varn, "Warp rain. Emperor, save us." Darren felt the whisper again, rolling gently like a tide. You don't need saving. You need understanding. He clenched his jaws so hard it hurt. The temple beneath the ruins. As the platoon took positions, the lieutenant split them into fire teams to clear the abandoned hab blocks. Darren's team was assigned a structure that looked burnt from the inside, its roof half collapsed. Melted stone dripped down the walls like wax. Inside, everything felt wrong. The air was colder, too still, and something beneath the floorboards throbbed. Darren felt it instantly, like a pulse syncing with his own heartbeat. "It's a basement," Varn whispered. "Old one. Looks sealed." The floor was covered in ash but cracked right down the middle, as though something had been pushing from below. Darren felt the tug again, stronger now. "Come to me." His head snapped upward. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" Darren swallowed. Nothing. No one else reacted. He stepped toward the crack, unable to stop himself. The whisper grew warm, inviting, coaxing. "I can take away the pain, the fear, the loneliness." His chest tightened. "What do you want?" he whispered under his breath. A gentle, amused filled his mind. "Only to guide you." Varn grabbed his shoulder. "Darren, back up! The floor isn't stable." But Darren was already sliding his foot into the crack, slowly, like drifting in a dream. That's when the ground gave way. The fall. The floor collapsed beneath him with a violent snap, sending him plummeting into darkness. He hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the breath from his lungs. Dust and ash exploded around him. He struggling to push himself up. Above him, Varn's voice echoed faintly. "Darren, we're getting rope! Hold on!" But the whisper drowned him out. "Good. You're finally alone." Darren's pulse raced. His vision flickered. Shadows twisted unnaturally along the walls, stretching like living tendrils. In the center of the basement was a circular pit. Runes carved into its stone rim glowed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the throbbing in the air. Darren didn't know what language the runes were written in, but he understood their meaning. Chaos was worshipped here, and something inside the pit was alive. The entity awakens. He stepped forward without meaning to. His body felt weightless, his thoughts foggy, as if someone else was moving him. The whisper intensified, not with words, but sensations. Warmth, pressure, rhythm. A heartbeat not his own. The pit pulsed. Darren's breath hitched. What are you?" Silence answered. Then, slowly, two faint lights rose from the darkness. Not eyes, not exactly, but points of awareness. The lights grew brighter. The whisper became a voice, soft, endless, ancient. "I am the part of you that was never allowed to speak. I am the strength you were told to fear. I am the path you were born for." Darren stumbled backward, shaking violently. "Get out of my head!" The basement trembled. The entity, again, fondly, almost lovingly. Darren, I was never in your head. You were in mine." His chest tightened, his vision blurred. A wave of pressure rolled through him, collapsing his knees. The voice wrapped around him like a cloak. "And now, it's time to wake up." The touch of chaos. Pain exploded through his body, not sharp, not stabbing, but molten, like fire under his skin. His veins lit up, his bones shivered, his muscles spasmed, twisting violently beneath his flesh. Darren, so loudly his voice cracked. Above him, faintly, he could hear Varn shouting orders. The crackling of rope, the pounding of boots. But down here, time slowed, reality warped. Something was rewriting him. His fingers lengthened, tendons snapping, bones stretching before recoiling back into place. His eyes rolled, visions splitting. For a heartbeat, he saw through his own eyes, and through something vast beneath the pit. Something that wasn't human. Something that had been watching him for years. The whisper grew louder, sharper now, edges of hunger and triumph bleeding into its tone. There you are, my chosen. Darren slammed his fist against the ground, fighting the change with every ounce of will he had left. No, I'm not yours. The voice, you already are. The rescue. The rope finally dropped beside him. Varn's voice, tight with fear, echoed from above. Darren, grab it! The spell broke, if only for a moment. Darren lunged, grabbing the rope with shaking hands. Varn and two others heaved, pulling him upward inch by inch. The basement shook. The runes around the pit flared violently. The voice inside Darren's skull. Do not leave me. His body convulsed, his hands slipped, fingers mutating briefly into twisted, grasping claws before snapping back. Varn leaned dangerously far over the ledge, reaching down. Take my hand! Darren reached. Their palms touched. The voice, Traitor! A shockwave of agony ripped through Darren's mind. He blacked out. The surface. He woke on the ground outside the ruins, gasping for breath, surrounded by Medicae and soldiers staring at him with fear barely disguised. Varn knelt beside him, shaking. What happened to you? Darren opened his mouth. No words came out, only a faint, distant, one only he could hear. You cannot run from what you are becoming. And Darren knew, with a cold horror deeper than anything he'd felt before, this was only the beginning.
The night after the warp storm, the sky above Outpost Vecran 12 did not return to normal. Most storms blew over the ash-soaked plains within hours. They screamed, they raged, they tore through the rusted fencing and the old Vox towers. But they passed. This one lingered. The clouds hovered like a bruise upon the heavens, pulsing faintly with veins of violet lightning. The air tasted strange, metallic, cold, and somehow alive. The soldiers joked that the warp had kissed the sky. But Darren Hallstrom wasn't joking. He felt that kiss burning on his skin. He sat on the edge of his bunk, staring at his hands. They shook again, just a small tremor this time, but enough to make him freeze. There it was, a twitch beneath the knuckle, a ripple like something shifting under his flesh. He closed his eyes and took a breath. It's nothing, he told himself. Low withdrawal, nerves, exhaustion. Everyone feels off after a warp storm. Everyone. But the lies tasted thin, and the whispers hadn't stopped. They had begun 2 nights ago, during the void-colored storm, a soft, slithering murmur in the corner of his thoughts. Not loud, not intrusive, just present. And tonight, they returned. Well done, Darren, the voice purred, as smooth as oil. You're finally paying attention. Darren's heart slammed against his ribs. No, he hissed under his breath. Not again. Not real. Just nerves. Oh, it's very real, the voice teased. You've simply been afraid to admit it. He squeezed his eyes tighter until sparks of pain danced behind them. He forced his breathing to slow, to settle, to drown the voice out. He had handled fear before. He had marched into battlefields filled with corpses. He had seen horrors that would destroy weaker men. He could handle this. He had to. The first stretch of flesh. He raised his hands again, palms facing him. At first glance, they looked normal, human, calloused from years of training, scarred from Lasburn flashback and shrapnel. But as he stared, really stared, his skin seemed different, thinner, more translucent, or was that just his imagination? He flexed his fingers. That was a mistake. The tremor came again, worse this time, and the flesh along his knuckles shifted. It bulged outward for a split second, as if a tiny bone had tried to rearrange itself. The skin tightened, stretched unnaturally, then snapped back. Darren fell backward off his bunk, crashing onto the metal floor. He stared at his hand, breath heaving, pulse roaring in his ears. "No! No, Throne, no!" He pressed the back of his hand against his chest, feeling the rapid, panicked thumping of his heart. His fingers felt cold, wrong, slightly too flexible, as though the joints had softened. Something was happening. Something that should not, could not, ever happen to a loyal Imperial Guardsman. Even the idea was treason. Mutation was death. Mutation was corruption. A mutation in the Imperium could only mean one thing: chaos. "Get a grip," he whispered, curling his shaking fingers into a fist. "You're not mutating. It's the storm. Radiation. Vox interference. Anything but that." But in the back of his mind, the whisper coiled again. Silky, amused. "Denial is adorable, Darren." Loneliness in a barracks full of men. The barracks around him was dim, silent except for the soft snores of exhausted soldiers. The flickering lumens cast long shadows across the rows of bunks. The stacked gear, the dangling helmets, the prayer strips tied to lasguns. The room smelled of sweat, oil, and machine incense. Normal things, comforting things. Yet Darren felt utterly alone. He swallowed hard and pushed himself back onto his bunk, holding his trembling hands beneath the blanket. If anyone saw him like this, if anyone noticed even the smallest change, he would be taken. Dragged away by the commissar, examined by the medici, purged if necessary. He'd seen it before, dozens of times. Soldiers didn't survive mutation. They were executed for it. He couldn't let that happen. Not to him, not now. He needed to hide it, control it. But then, the whisper returned. "You don't need to hide from me." His breath froze. "Leave me alone," he whispered, barely audible. "But I've been with you since the storm," the voice crooned. "I felt you reaching back. I felt your mind opening." "I didn't," he swallowed the words. "I didn't open anything." A soft chuckle echoed through his skull. "Oh, you did. Just a crack. But that was enough." The pain comes again. Darren's knuckles flared with heat, sharp, stabbing pain that made him grit his teeth so hard his jaw hurt. Then came the twisting sensation again. He ripped the blanket away and stared in horror as his fingers stretched, just slightly, becoming thin and elongated. Not bone-breaking, not skin-tearing, more like soft clay being pulled apart. His breath came in ragged bursts. The fingers stayed stretched for a second, then snapped back to normal. Just like before. No scars, no marks, no sign that anything had changed at all. His hands were perfectly human again. His voice cracked with fear. "What is happening to me?" "You are awakening," the whisper said. A child taking its first breath, a spark catching flame. "No." He clutched his hands helplessly. "I'm a soldier of the Imperium. I follow the God Emperor." The whisper laughed, a low, delighted purr. Do you? Then why does he let you break apart so beautifully? Memories of purification. Darren's mind snapped back years earlier to his first deployment, where he had stood helpless while an entire squad was lined up for execution after traces of mutation were found. A twitching hand, a second joint in a jaw, a corrupted eye. None of them had asked for it. None had been willing. But it didn't matter. Mutation was death. Mutation meant chaos. Chaos meant purge. That day, he had sworn he would rather die than become impure. And now, he was becoming the very thing he feared. His stomach twisted violently. He leaned forward, retching dryly, bile burning the back of his throat. Footsteps shifted in a nearby bunk. A soldier rolled over, muttering in sleep. Darren froze, terrified of waking anyone, terrified of being seen. He waited until the barracks fell silent again. Then the whisper hummed. You will not die. I won't allow it. You are precious, Darren, chosen. He shook his head violently. I'm not chosen. I'm cursed. That depends on who you ask, the voice said. To the gods, you are a seed, and you have begun to sprout. The mirror test. Darren couldn't stay here. If another tremor came and someone noticed, it would be over. He stood, boots silent on the cold floor, and slipped into the corridor. The hallway was dim, lumens flickering under the strain of the warp storm interference. The air crackled with static. Distant machinery thrummed somewhere deep in the outpost. He went straight to the hygiene unit, a cramped space lined with metal sinks, a cracked mirror, and a rust-stained shower stall. The light buzzed overhead like an insect dying. He leaned over the sink, gripping its edges hard enough to whiten his knuckles. His reflection stared back at him, pale skin, sunken eyes, a thin scar across his cheek from the siege of Caltris. But something about his face, something subtle. Was his jaw sharper? Had his eyes darkened? Was his skin thinner? Or was he imagining it? He leaned closer. His heartbeat thundered. Okay, he whispered to himself. Hands. He lifted them slowly. They looked normal, perfectly normal. He turned them over, flexed the fingers. No twitch, no ripple. No. Pain shot through him like a hot knife. He gasped, slapping his palm onto the mirror for support. The flesh on his palm writhed. He watched, eyes wide, breath shaking as a lump pushed up beneath the skin, elongated, dragged itself from one side of his hand to the other, like an insect crawling under his flesh. He choked back a scream. Stop! 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 His other hand clawed at the wall as he trembled violently. Then suddenly, it stopped. The skin stilled, flattened, returning to normal. He staggered back, crashing into the sink behind him. His hand looked perfectly untouched. The whisper slid into his mind again, pleased and patient. Beautiful, isn't it? The first bloom of your potential. He stared at his palm like it belonged to someone else. This isn't potential, he rasped. It's corruption. Corruption, the voice said, sounding genuinely amused, is merely evolution with a bad reputation. Breaking down, Darren sank to the floor, back against the metal wall, knees pulled to his chest. He couldn't think. He couldn't breathe. His entire body felt fragile, unstable, as if the next heartbeat might trigger another horrifying change. He dug his fingers into his hair. What do you want? He whispered. What do you want from me? The voice answered gently. To help you become what you were meant to be. I am meant to serve the Emperor, and yet you suffer. You tremble. You shatter beneath your own humanity. A pause. Let me make you stronger. No. Let me make you more than this. No, let me make you survive. He froze. The last word struck deep. Survive. It echoed through him more powerfully than any prayer. Because deep down, beneath all loyalty, beneath all duty, he was afraid of dying. And whatever was happening to him, it felt like a slow death. His mutations were accelerating, becoming more frequent, more painful. He pressed a shaking hand to his face. He was changing, and he couldn't stop it. He couldn't tell the Medicae, they'd kill him. He couldn't tell his squad, they'd report him. He couldn't tell the commissar, he'd be shot instantly. He had no one, except the whisper, and he hated that.
A fracture of faith. He looked up at the dim, flickering mirror. What am I becoming? The whisper answered with something cold and certain. You are becoming free. He shook his head. No, I won't be a monster. I won't be a heretic. I won't. His breath caught. For the briefest moment, just a heartbeat, his reflection in the mirror changed. His eyes elongated. His jaw twisted sharply upward. His skin pulsed like liquid flesh. Then it vanished, back to normal. His legs gave out beneath him. No. Emperor, preserve me. Does he hear you, Darren? The whisper asked softly. Did he stop the storm? Did he stop your pain? Did he stop your change? Darren clenched his jaw. He will. He must. And yet, the voice said almost sympathetically, he has not. The silence that followed felt heavy. A silence filled with fear. A silence filled with truth. Darren bowed his head, shaking uncontrollably. I'm scared, he whispered. Good, the voice replied. Fear is honest. Fear is fertile. Fear makes you reach for strength, even forbidden strength. He didn't deny it. He couldn't. Because if this was only the beginning, what would he look like tomorrow, next week, next month? What would he become? The mutation returns. Suddenly his hand snapped upward on its own. He gasped, grabbing it with his other hand, trying to force it down. The fingers twitched violently. Bones shifted. The skin stretched. His palm cracked open for a split second, not bleeding, not tearing, just opening like heated wax. A long, thin, boneless appendage rippled beneath the skin of his wrist, pushing upward. He screamed through clenched teeth. Get out of me! The whisper whispered lovingly. Why would I ever leave? You are becoming magnificent. His hand twisted grotesquely. He slammed it against the wall, once, twice, 3 times, trying to force the mutation to stop. Finally, the flesh recoiled. The deformation snapped back. His hand became human again. He sagged against the wall, drenched in sweat, gasping for air. It was over. For now. But the truth was unmistakable. This was only the first mutation. There would be more. And the whisper's final promise. As his ragged breathing slowly calmed, the whisper curled around his thoughts like smoke. Sleep now, Darren. I can't. You must. Your body changes even when you dream, perhaps especially then. He shuddered. I don't want to change. A soft, almost comforting chuckle echoed inside him. You already have. Darren closed his eyes, tears streaking down his face. Because he knew it was true. The first mutation had come. And nothing in the galaxy, not faith, not fear, not even the Emperor himself, would stop the transformation that had begun. Darren Hale had not slept for 3 days. He sat alone in the ruined bunker, boots soaking in a mixture of mud and blood, his laser gun resting across his trembling knees. Rain tapped against the shattered permacrete roof like thin claws. Every sound felt amplified, every drop, every breath, every heartbeat. But worst of all, the whispers were awake again. They slid through the air like oil seeping under a door, soft and serpentine. Darren. He tried to ignore them. Emperor help him, he tried. But ignoring the warp was like ignoring fire while standing in its center. You could pretend it wasn't real. You could swear you were stronger than it. But the heat would always reach you. And the whispers always returned. They were gentle tonight, almost affectionate. But he knew better. They always began this way. "Get out of my head," he muttered, clenching his skull with both hands. "Why would we leave? You invited us." The voice sounded like his own, then like his mother's, then like a stranger's. It was never consistent, never predictable, never human. Darren's breath came out ragged, forming small ghosts in the cold air. He wasn't mad. At least, he didn't think he was. The warp had been creeping into his mind ever since the storm 3 weeks prior, a shimmering violet-black tempest that swallowed 2 regiments and half the sky. It was a miracle he had survived at all. Or maybe a curse. He couldn't tell anymore. The first sign. The whispers had begun as random thoughts, loose strings that slipped between moments of fear and exhaustion. They would comment on irrelevant things. "The sergeant's hand is shaking. Corporal Jin hates you. Your heart beats too fast." Small observations that could have been paranoia. But slowly, they evolved. They began answering questions he had never asked aloud. They began speaking when he tried to pray. They began using his own memories. No one else heard them. That was the worst part. They lived in him. And every day, the warp's presence pressed harder against his skull, like an ancient beast testing the walls of a fragile cage. Tonight, however, it felt different. It felt attentive, as if something on the other side had finally decided he was worth talking to. The bunker. Outside, thunder growled like a wounded titan. The battle had shifted further north hours ago, but Darren stayed behind under the pretense of watch duty. In reality, he just couldn't face the others. His squad already suspected something was wrong with him. They whispered when he wasn't listening. They stared at his hands as if expecting them to transform into claws. If only they knew how close they truly were. Darren lifted his laser gun and checked the charge for the 10th time. His fingers twitched with involuntary spasms. A fresh wave of nausea passed over him. His vision blurred for a moment, showing the world through a warped fisheye lens. The warp pressed closer. "Why fight it, Darren? You feel it, don't you? The strength beneath your skin? The potential?" He gritted his teeth. "No. You are changing. That is good. Change brings power. Stagnation brings death." He squeezed his eyes shut. "Shut up. We only want to help." The whispering stopped. That was never a good sign. Silence meant it was preparing something. And minutes later, he felt it. The air inside the bunker thickened. The rain outside softened until it became a distant dream. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls. The temperature dropped suddenly enough for his breath to frost. And then, the warp opened. Not with noise, not with light, but with presence. A slow, deliberate pressure pushed into the bunker. It felt like the atmosphere had turned into warm liquid, and he was drowning in it. His skin prickled. His thoughts slowed. Gravity bent around him. Darren froze. "Emperor, preserve me." "He cannot hear you," said a new voice. A figure stepped from the darkness, though step wasn't quite the right word. It coalesced, as if woven from shadow and smoke. It had a humanoid shape at first, but the edges blurred, like a candle's flame seen through warped glass. Eyes, no, not eyes, but glowing spheres, watched him with amusement. A demon. A real, undeniable demon. Darren's heart slammed against his ribs. His first instinct was to fire, but when he tried to lift his laser gun, his arms refused to obey. "Stay away," he said, though his voice cracked like a child's. "I already am with you," the demon replied, tone smooth and cold. "I have been, for some time." The realization hit him like a blow. "The whispers," he said. "That was you!" The demon tilted its head, the way a predator might examine a wounded animal. "We whispered because you listened. Many humans do not. Their minds are primitive. Yours, however," it leaned closer, "is porous." Darren swallowed hard. Porous. Not open. Not gifted. Porous. Fragile. Breakable. A weakness, not a blessing. The demon's offer. "What do you want from me?" Darren whispered. The demon smiled without a mouth. "To offer you a bargain." "I don't want anything from you." "You will." The demon drifted around him, each step, or glide, warping the air like heat distortion. Shadows shook. Dust lifted off the ground. "You fear yourself," it said softly. "The changes, the power beneath your skin, the potential." "My body is broken. Whatever this is, warp sickness, mutation, it's killing me." "Wrong." Its voice slithered into his ear. "It is awakening you." He clenched his fists. No. No, this isn't a gift. This is corruption. This is how chaos destroys us." The demon laughed, a low, vibrating sound that made the bunker tremble. "Destroy you? No, little soldier. We do not destroy. We reshape." It raised a hand, or something hand-like, and the space between them rippled. A vision formed. Darren saw himself, but not as he was now. He saw a towering, mutated warrior with thick armor fused to flesh. Tendrils of warp energy coiled around his arms. His body radiated impossible strength. He looked unstoppable, invincible, a god made of agony and glory. "You could be this," the demon whispered. "A champion, a chosen, one who is feared." The vision shifted. Darren saw himself leading hordes of cultists, slaughtering enemies with monstrous claws. He saw planets burning. He saw his name carved into stone like a dark legend. The demon's voice slid into his bones. "You hate being weak. You hate being afraid. Let us remove those things." "I don't want that," Darren said, though his voice trembled with doubt. The demon hissed. You lie to yourself. The image faded, and in its place appeared another vision. This time, it showed Darren's squad, his friends, his brothers. They were discussing him. Darren's not right. He's mutating. He's dangerous. If he changes again, we'll have to put him down. Darren's breath caught. No, they wouldn't. They would, the demon interrupted. And they will. They already fear you. They already watch you. They already plan to kill you the moment you slip. His heart twisted. He remembered Jin's nervous stare, Sergeant Malrek's whispered conversations, how they backed away from him lately. You cannot go back to them, the demon said. But you can come to us. Darren shook his head violently. No, I'll fight this. The Emperor has abandoned you. The demon's voice ripped through him like a blade. Did he stop the storm? Did he silence the whispers? Did he protect your mind? Did he prevent your mutation? Darren's jaw clenched. A painful truth pulsed inside him. He had prayed. For days, for nights, for mercy, for silence. But the warp only grew louder. I don't want to become a monster, he whispered. The demon leaned until its non-face was inches from his. You already are. Something broke inside him. Not a bone, not a muscle, but a thought, a fundamental belief. For the first time, Darren felt truly alone, isolated from his squad, from humanity, from the Emperor. And the warp felt warm, comforting, seductive. What bargain? He finally asked, voice shaking. The demon smiled. A simple one, it said. Accept your evolution. Embrace the change. Let the warp complete what it has begun. And in return? He asked, barely able to speak. We will give you control. The words echoed like thunder. Control. The single thing he lacked. The one thing he feared losing entirely. You will not fade into madness, the demon lied smoothly. You will not become a mindless beast. You will rise. The demon extended its hand, a thin, delicate gesture, a gesture of corruption. Take my hand, Darren Hale, it whispered, and become more. His hand trembled. He reached out, stopped, pulled back. I can't. The demon's eyes narrowed. For the first time, its presence felt cold, disappointed. You refuse? I refuse. Silence filled the bunker. The demon slowly drifted backward, its form flickering with irritation. You misunderstand, little soldier, it said quietly. This was not a request. Darren's stomach dropped. What? You were given a chance to rise, the demon hissed. And you refused. Now you will fall. The bunker exploded with warp energy. Pain ripped through Darren's entire body. His spine arched. His fingers elongated before snapping back. His eyes burned as if filled with boiling oil. He screamed. The demon's voice roared over him. You will become what chaos chooses you to become. Not a champion, not a warrior, but a creature of instinct, horror, and disfigurement. A chaos spawn. Darren thrashed on the ground, begging, screaming, clawing at his face as mutations erupted across his flesh like tumors of living fire. "Please, please, stop!" But chaos never stopped. The demon looked down at him with cold amusement. "Your refusal seals your fate." Darren's vision dimmed. His bones twisted. His skin churned like liquid. Every nerve felt like it was being rewritten. "You should have accepted the bargain." Then everything went dark. And Darren Hale's nightmare truly began. The war within. The first cracks did not appear on Darren Hale's flesh. Flesh can endure much in the 41st millennium. It can be cut, burned, broken, and sutured again. A surgeon can mend bone. A medicae can drain infection. Even a battlefield apothecary can stitch together what once seemed lost. But there is no stitching a soul. The first cracks began in Darren's mind. At first, he believed they were only nightmares brought on by the war. Many guardsmen suffered the same. Visions of the dead, the sound of artillery in the dark, the whisper of guilt for those they failed to save. But nightmares end when the sun rises. His did not. Every morning, Darren awoke more exhausted than before, as if something devoured his sleep from the inside. As if, somewhere deep within him, a battle raged that he did not remember fighting. He told no one. No guardsman complains unless the wound is visible. The pressure of silence. Darren's regiment, the 809th Cadian Survivors, had been deployed on the world of Verithrax, a mining moon recently overrun with heretics. The air smelled of rust and burnt fuel. The skies were permanently bruised by warp storms that swirled like angry gods. It was a cursed place, one that made even the bravest tighten their grip on their laser guns. But Darren's fear was different. It was intimate, personal. On their marches, he found his fingers twitching out of rhythm, almost curling in ways fingers shouldn't. When he gripped his laser gun too long, the metal felt soft, malleable, as though ready to merge with his flesh. Once, during a long patrol, he swore the weapon pulsed like a heartbeat. The whispers in the warp-sick wind echoed words he pretended not to hear. "You are chosen. You are breaking. Let us in." Each day he fought the urge to scream. Each night he lost more of who he was. The squad knows something is wrong. Sergeant Kalen was the first to notice. "You're falling behind again," she muttered one evening as they dug their trench line. "You look like hell, guardsman." Darren opened his mouth to answer, but the words tangled, curling into something cold at the back of his throat. "I'm fine," he forced out after a moment. Kalen watched him with narrowed eyes. She'd seen this before. On the Eye of Terror front, among troopers exposed to too much warp-tainted madness. She didn't push him. Yet. But others in the squad whispered, "He doesn't blink enough. He mutters in his sleep. His shadow moved wrong yesterday. Something's wrong with Hale." Little by little, they avoided him. Not obviously, not cruelly. Just enough that he felt a growing gap between himself and the rest of the living. Isolation gave the whispers room to grow. The twitch that should not be. On the 9th night, he woke to pain shooting up his arm. His hand hung inches above his face, but his fingers had elongated, thin, sickly stretched, like tendons grown too long. He blinked. They snapped back to normal. The pain lingered, as if flesh remembered what bone wanted to forget. "This isn't possible," he told himself. "I'm hallucinating. Fatigue. Stress." Yet he knew the truth. Something was changing him. From the inside. Confrontation at dawn. During a morning roll call, Kaylin grabbed him by the shoulder after spotting him staring into nothing, lips moving silently. "What's happening to you?" she demanded. "Nothing." Her grip tightened. "I don't tolerate liars in my squad." A tremor crawled up Darren's spine. He felt heat bubbling just beneath his skin. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He tried to pull away, but Kaylin held firm. "Look at me," she ordered. He did. For a second, just a fraction, his pupils elongated like those of a reptile. Kaylin flinched, hand darting toward her sidearm. But before either of them could speak, the sky cracked with artillery fire. The heretics were launching an assault. "Later," she hissed. "We'll talk later." Darren wished she never said that. Because later, there would be no words left between them. The battle without and the battle within. When the heretics came, they came screaming praises to their dark gods. Their armor was corrupted, bubbling with warp rot. Many had grown extra limbs or unnatural eyes. They were monsters, no longer truly human. Darren fired into the charging horde, forcing his trembling hands steady. The recoil felt different today, heavier. His laser gun throbbed. Or maybe it was his heartbeat syncing with the weapon. "Focus, Hale," Kaylin barked beside him. "Sweep fire! Don't freeze up!" But he wasn't freezing. He was burning. Something boiled inside him as he squeezed the trigger. His eyes blurred. The battlefield dissolved into streaks of red and black. The sounds of laser gun fire twisted into a chorus of distant wails. He heard whispers slithering through the roar of combat. "Let go. Stop resisting. Your flesh remembers what it must become." A heretic lunged at him, screaming blasphemies. Darren raised his weapon, but instead of firing, his arm jerked violently on its own. His elbow bent backwards briefly, unnaturally, before snapping back. The heretic froze in confusion. Then Darren crushed the man's throat with one strike. His hand had moved like a striking serpent. Even he had not seen it coming. Horror sets in. The kill should have filled him with satisfaction or adrenaline. Instead, dread flooded him. He staggered back, staring at his own hand, which twitched as though tugged by invisible puppet strings. Kaylin saw it. Darren saw her eyes widen. Fear, not of the enemy, of him. "Hale," she whispered. What are you becoming?" The words ripped through him harder than any bullet. "I don't know. Something's wrong with me." She raised her pistol, not aimed to kill, not yet, but ready. And that readiness tore deeper into him than anything else. He wasn't her soldier anymore. He was a threat. The warp shadow inside. The battle around them seemed to fade, drowned by a rising storm inside his skull. His thoughts fractured. He felt himself slipping between shapes, one moment human, the next something stretching at the edges of reality. "Hold on," he begged himself. "Hold on, Darren. Don't let it in." But the whisper replied, "We are not entering. You are awakening." He screamed and clutched his head as a vision washed over him. Planets consumed by warp fire, demons laughing, the ground pulsing like a living thing. And at the center of it all, a malformed creature with too many limbs and no mind. A chaos spawn. He felt its hunger, its agony, its emptiness. That will be me, he realized. That's what I'm becoming. Desperation and betrayal. "Kaelin," he gasped as she approached, pistol low but ready to raise. "You have to kill me. Kill me before—" "Not yet," she said quietly. "We need to understand what corrupted you. Command needs to know. You might have information we can extract." Extract. He knew what that meant. He might as well be dead already. Something in him snapped, not physically but spiritually. A last fragile thread of trust broke. He backed away. "Stay away from me." Kaelin took a slow step forward. "Darren, I'm trying to help." "No," he whispered. "You're trying to contain me." His pulse thundered louder. His skin rippled. His arms spasmed violently. Bones ached as if pushing outward. His vision fractured into 3 overlapping layers. Kaelin saw it happen. Her pistol raised. Instinct, not thought, took over inside him. He leapt backwards, faster than a human should, landing on all 4s before scrambling upright. His breath came in ragged gasps. She didn't shoot. That somehow hurt even more. Because she feared him too much to get closer. The turning point. Another wave of heretics charged toward them, chanting in twisted, garbled voices. Warp energy flickered around their warped flesh. Darren felt a deep pull toward them, a sickening familiarity, as if he belonged among them. "No," he snarled through gritted teeth. "No, I'm not one of you." His own voice echoed strangely, splitting into 2 tones, one human, one warped. Kaelin fired at the heretics, shouting, "Hail! Snap out of it! Fight, Emperor, damn you!" The Emperor. The name burned like acid inside him, not because he rejected it, but because something inside him did. Darren dropped to his knees. His veins pulsed like molten metal under his skin. His bones rattled. His muscles bulged unevenly, twitching as though something pushed against them from the inside. He vomited blood and black tar. He felt his mind slipping, not drifting, tearing. "Fight," he ordered himself. "Fight!" "Why fight?" hissed the whisper. "Why cling to a dying identity? Become what you are meant to be." "I am Dare." His words dissolved into a guttural growl. The inner battle. Darren found himself in a void. Or perhaps it was only inside his mind. He couldn't tell anymore. Before him stood 2 shapes. One was him, human, armored, terrified. The other was a monstrous silhouette, twisting, shifting, without a stable form. Between them was a river of warp energy, spiraling in impossible directions. The creature spoke without a mouth. "You know where this ends." Darren clenched his jaw. "I'm not becoming you." "You already have." It lunged. Darren fought it, not with weapons, but with memories. His home on Cadia, his first day of service, his friends. His laughter before the galaxy taught him how foolish laughter was. Each memory he slammed into the creature made it recoil in agony. But every moment of resistance cost him. His real body convulsed on the battlefield, his back arching violently, skin rupturing in places as warp taint forced its way through. He could hear Kaelin shouting something distant, but her voice echoed like it came from another world. The creature struck Darren again, this time harder, and he felt a piece of himself crumble. "You cannot win," it hissed. "You were chosen." "No," Darren whispered. "I was targeted." It didn't deny it. Chaos never needed permission, only opportunity. The shattering. The battle inside him reached a crescendo. His human self and the warp shadow form collided in a battle of wills, each ripping pieces from the other. His real body twitched violently, limbs stretching and snapping back, eyes flickering between human and monstrous. Space Marines speak of physical battles, but this was spiritual genocide. Just when the creature's claws gripped around his throat, inside his mind and outside, Darren did something unexpected. He stopped fighting. Not because he surrendered, but because he accepted a terrible truth. He could not defeat the monster, but he could deny it his soul. "If I die," he whispered, "you die with me." The creature froze. For the first time it felt fear. Darren's body lurched upright on sheer willpower. He grabbed Kalen's pistol by the barrel, turning it to his own temple. "Forgive me," he whispered. Kalen's eyes widened. "Darren, no!" He pulled the trigger. The magazine was empty. The creature inside him laughed, and Darren finally truly broke. The final moment of humanity. Kalen tackled him before he could reach another weapon, pinning him to the mud. "Stay with me," she cried. "Don't let it take you." But it was already too late. Darren's flesh rippled, his eyes rolled back. His scream tore open into a warping, monstrous howl. The transformation began. Kalen stumbled away, tears she didn't have time to shed, because the man she knew had ended, and something else had begun. The storm had been raging for 3 days, though no one could tell where the thunder ended and where the warp began. On the blighted world of Karthus 9, the sky twisted in sickly shades of violet and blotched red, as if some massive beast bled across the clouds. Lightning rolled like serpents through the heavens, and every blast carried not just sound, but whispers, warped echoes that crawled under the skin of every soldier unlucky enough to hear them. Among those soldiers was Darren Holt, a once steady Imperial Guardsman, now reduced to trembling hands and sleepless nights. His regiment had been deployed to root out cultists, but what they found was something far older and far darker than mere heresy. It began small, a shiver in his bones, a glow at the edge of vision, a hand trembling when he tried to reload his lasgun. The medics claimed it was fatigue, maybe stress, but Darren knew better. No nightmares lasted this long, no fever whispered your name from the shadows, and definitely no hallucination made your fingers stretch when no one was looking. As night fell on the 4th day, he sat inside the collapsed ruins of an administratum block. The walls groaned as if alive, and the dust smelled faintly of rust and blood. Around him, members of his squad slept in uneasy shifts, but Darren did not sleep anymore. Every time he drifted, he felt something moving behind his eyes, something patient, something hungry. He stared at his hands. They looked normal now, but earlier that day, during patrol, they had warped, elongating like wax left near a flame. He snapped them back to shape using sheer will and terror. His knuckles still ached. He pressed his palms to his face and whispered a prayer he barely remembered from his childhood. "Emperor, please, help me." But the Emperor remained silent. The whispers didn't. "Why ask him? He never answered before. He never saved you. But I can. I can make the pain stop." Darren squeezed his eyes shut. "Stop. Stop talking. I only speak because you are ready to listen." He dug his nails into his scalp until beads of blood formed. The pain grounded him. For a moment the whispers faded, but they always came back. The march into madness. At dawn the order came, push into the obsidian sprawl, a maze of half-melted manufactorum towers warping under the influence of the warp storm. The cultists were retreating deeper inside, pulling Imperial forces along like prey caught on a hook. Darren marched with the squad, sweat running cold down his spine despite the humid, choking air. Something inside him pulsed with every step, like a second heartbeat, one that wasn't his. His legs felt wrong, his skin prickled as if something crawled beneath it. "Hey!" A hand clapped his shoulder. It was Sergeant Varlin, a hard-faced man with a bionic eye and no patience for weakness. "You with us, Holt?" "Yes, sir," Darren lied. "You look like death." "I feel like it too." Varlin studied him for a moment. "If you're sick, report to medical." "It's not sickness," Darren whispered before he could stop himself. "What was that?" "Nothing." The sergeant narrowed his eyes but moved on. The deeper they marched, the more reality began to warp. Walls pulsed like organs. Shadows clung to the soldiers' legs like eager beasts. At one point, a trooper ahead began screaming that the ground was melting, only to have his body dragged into the metallic floor as if swallowed whole. Darren froze. Varlin grabbed him by the collar and yanked him forward. "Move!" But movement only stirred whatever writhed inside him. The first surge. A squad of cultists ambushed them near the base of a shattered spire. They wore masks made of bone and metal, and their chants were not meant for human ears. The air grew colder as they raised their twisted icons. Several guardsmen fell immediately. Varlin barked orders. Lasguns lit the gloom. Darren raised his weapon to fire, but pain exploded through his arm. His fingers curled involuntarily. Bones popped. The lasgun slipped from his grasp. Darren screamed. His arm writhed as if filled with liquid fire. Muscle twisted, tendons snapped, and his skin bubbled like boiling wax. His elbow reversed direction, bending the wrong way. Flesh split open, revealing something pulsing underneath, something that glowed faintly purple. A trooper beside him shrieked, "What the hell? Mutant! Mutant!" "Stay back! I can't control!" The voices returned, now triumphant. "Let go, Darren. Let the warp fire shape you. Let yourself become what you were always meant to be." "No!" Darren slammed his arm against the wall until bone cracked back into place. Blood sprayed. He howled through clenched teeth. The mutation receded, barely. The skin stitched itself with unnatural speed. His squad stared at him with horror, but before they could question him further, more cultists poured in. And the battle forced everyone to look away. His heart pounded. His breath caught in his throat. "Darren!" a voice screamed. "Behind you!" He turned and saw a fellow guardsman, Latimer, staring not at the cultists, but at him. "Holy Throne, what have you become?" I'm still me," Darren whispered. "Stay away!" Latimer fired. The las bolt hit Darren in the chest. It should have blown a hole through him. Instead, the flesh rippled and absorbed the heat. Darren staggered backward. "Please, don't. I need help." But help did not come. Only more pain. His spine twisted. Tendons snapped like taut wires. His jaw extended. One eye melted into his cheek. A second mouth tore open along his neck, screaming with a voice not his own. Varlin rushed toward him, sword raised. "Holt! Fight it! Do you hear me? Fight it!" Darren tried. He truly tried. But the whispers were now deafening. "You were chosen. You are ours. Break, break, break." His body erupted. Bones burst through skin. Limbs split. Flesh bubbled. New limbs clawed their way out of his torso. His scream became a gurgling roar that echoed across the ruins. Guardsmen fled in terror. Varlin alone stood his ground, though horror etched every line of his face. "Emperor, forgive me," he whispered, raising his sword. Darren tried to speak, to beg, to deny the fate crushing him, but the words drowned in mutations exploding across his throat. He lunged, not because he wanted to, because his body no longer obeyed him. Varlin slashed, but Darren's newly mutated arms wrapped around him, crushing armor like paper. The sergeant screamed as his bones cracked. Darren felt everything. He felt Varlin die in his grasp. He felt the horror, the guilt, the despair. But he could not stop. The warp had taken full control. When Varlin's body hit the ground, Darren staggered backward. His mind shrieked inside the monstrous form he now wore. His flesh writhed uncontrollably. New eyes blinked open across his chest. A tentacle tore through his ribs. His legs fused into a mass of bone and sinew. He was becoming a chaos spawn. And it was irreversible. The monster emerges. The cultists cheered, raising their weapons in triumph, praising the dark gods for this gift. They bowed before the writhing horror Darren had become. But the warp was not finished. His body twisted violently, swelling and collapsing, bones rearranging like melted wax. He slammed into the ground, cracking stone with the force. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the grotesque silhouette of his mutating form. He no longer had a face, no longer had a voice, only pain. Endless, unending, maddening pain. The whispers congratulated him. The warp embraced him. And his human mind, what little remained, shattered. The final snap of sanity. As the transformation reached its peak, a last flicker of Darren's humanity surfaced. A memory, soft, fragile, of sitting with his sister under a summer sky back home. Her laughter, the warmth of the sun, the life he once lived. He tried to hold it, tried to cling to it, but the warp devoured it like everything else. The last piece of Darren Holt died in that moment. What remained was a mindless beast, thrashing and roaring in the ruins. A chaos spawn, a mockery of life, a joke of the gods. His breaking point had come and passed, and there was no return. The descent begins. They move through the ruins for hours. Cultists ambush them like insects guided by some unseen intelligence. Darren tried to stay in the back, tried to hide his shaking hands, but every burst of adrenaline brought another jolt of mutation. A spine protruding from his shoulder, his eyes momentarily seeing in 3 different directions, his tongue splitting before fusing again. He wiped blood from his lips, trying not to scream and alert the squad. By the time they reached the central courtyard of the sprawl, half the squad was dead. The surviving guardsmen formed a defensive line as hundreds of cultists gathered around them, chanting louder and louder, their voices rising into a frenzy. Above them, the warp storm churned into a vortex, something vast and alive. Darren felt it looking at him. Not them. Him. The breaking point. Varlin raised his power sword as the chanting reached a climax. "Hold the line! For the Emperor!" The cultists charged. The world erupted in chaos. Bolts of dark energy, laser fire, screams, and steel clashing. Darren fought desperately, his muscles twitching, his bones twisting every few seconds. He parried a cultist's axe, but felt his arm suddenly elongate mid-swing. He stumbled. Another cultist rushed him. His vision went black, and then crimson. He didn't remember attacking. He only remembered the after. The cultist lay in pieces around him, limbs torn off, spine exposed. Blood dripped from Darren's fingertips. Fingertips that were now claws. The gift of chaos. What really happened? Darren collapsed on the blood-soaked ground, his body uncontrollably. The battlefield around him was a ruined hellscape, shattered armor, burning corpses, and the heavy iron scent of spilled life. But Darren barely saw any of it. His world had shrunk into blinding pain. Something inside him was breaking. Something else was awakening. Then, the air grew unnaturally cold, and the dust around his body lifted as if gravity suddenly forgot its purpose. The whispers he had heard for days became a single, unified voice, smooth, cruel, and amused. A chaos sorcerer stepped out from between flickering tiers of warp light. His armor was obsessed with symbols twisted beyond mortal logic, glowing with corrupted runes that pulsed like living veins. He looked down at Darren as one might look at a dying insect. "Ah," the sorcerer whispered, "your resistance has made you deliciously unstable. The dark gods adore broken things." Darren tried to crawl away, but his limbs contorted, bending at angles they were never supposed to. He screamed, half human, half something else, before collapsing again. The sorcerer knelt beside him. "You sought strength," he said. "You fought the warp. But you were chosen, mortal. And now you will receive the gift of chaos." He placed a gauntleted hand on Darren's forehead. Every rune on his armor ignited. The ground beneath them cracked open. Darren felt the warp storm through him like fire made of knives, twisting, stretching, mutating every cell of his body. His skin bubbled like boiling water, his bones melted and reformed. New limbs burst from beneath his ribs. His mouth tore open into 3 new mouths, each screaming independently. The sorcerer laughed softly. "This is no curse. This is ascension. You should be honored." Darren tried to speak, to beg, to plead, but all that came out was a wet, choking roar. He felt memories being ripped from him, his parents, his home, every moment that made him human, devoured by the warp like a starving beast. He reached for his final memory, his sister's face. It slipped away. The sorcerer tightened his grip, forcing more warp energy through the brand he carved into Darren's flesh, it glowing like molten metal. With one last shuddering convulsion, Darren's humanity tore apart. A fleshy mass of claws, tentacles, eyes, and teeth erupted where a man once lay. The creature screamed, confused and terrified, unable to understand anything except agony. The sorcerer released him. "Go, spawn," he commanded. The chaos spawn lurched forward, uncontrolled and rabid. It attacked everything in sight, friend, foe, the dead, the living, anything to release its endless pain. The sorcerer watched with satisfaction. "To serve chaos," he murmured, "is to suffer. And in suffering, you become something more." The spawn didn't understand the words. It only understood pain and hunger and the endless, eternal madness that the gift of chaos brings. The final shred of humanity. Darren felt the last threads of his mind slipping away like ashes scattered in a warp storm. The Chaos Sorcerer's runes still burned across his flesh, pulsing with sickening light. Every beat sent another wave of mutation tearing through him. Muscles swelled and burst, bones twisted into impossible shapes. His veins glowed like molten metal beneath his skin. But the worst pain came from inside. His memories, once the anchor of his soul, began to dissolve. He tried to hold on to them. He tried to remember who he was. He saw the face of his younger sister, smiling on the day he left for war. He heard his mother calling his name, "Darren, come home safe." He remembered the oath he swore before the Emperor's shrine, but the warp wanted everything. Those memories flickered, warped, and shattered like fragile glass. His sister's face melted into a grotesque mask. His mother's voice turned into a chorus of demonic laughter. Even the Emperor's image twisted into a leering, many-eyed monstrosity. He screamed, a raw, broken sound, but the scream no longer belonged to a human throat. It echoed as a guttural, bubbling roar filled with primal agony. His mind split. One half clung to the last ember of humanity, begging, "Please, stop, please." The other half drowned in the warp's hungry flood, howling with mindless instinct. His hands, no longer hands, scraped across the ground, dragging him forward like a wounded beast. Skin peeled from his arm, revealing chitinous plates beneath. His eyes multiplied, vision fracturing into 1,000 overlapping nightmares. Thoughts became static, words became noise, name, gone. Purpose, gone. Self, gone. The warp did not steal him violently. It devoured him slowly, savoring every fragment of his humanity as it unraveled. The last coherent thought he ever had drifted through the collapsing ruins of his mind. "I just wanted to survive." Then the ember went out. The man named Darren died. What remained was a creature, a thing, an ever-changing abomination of warped flesh, a chaos spawn in all but formality. And for the first time, the new creature opened its many eyes. And nothing human looked out from within.
The birth of a chaos spawn. The transformation did not begin with a scream. It began with a tear, a wet, splitting sound deep inside Darren's chest, like muscle peeling away from bone. For a heartbeat, he remained aware. The world around him wavered. The battlefield blurred into smears of gunfire and smoke. His squad's voices sounded far away, as if underwater. Then the warp surged through him. His bones twisted first. They didn't break. Breaking would have been merciful. Instead, they stretched, bending like heated iron rods. His arms lengthened in grotesque spasms, joints reversing direction. His legs buckled, reshaped, elongated, becoming something more akin to an animal's hind limbs than a soldier's. His spine convulsed, arching backward until it snapped into a new shape with a sickening crunch, forming unnatural ridges that pushed through torn skin like jagged horns. His skin bubbled next. It swelled, popped, and sloughed off in patches to reveal slick, pulsating meat beneath. New flesh grew over it instantly. Warped flesh, unstable and glistening, constantly shifting color and texture. Veins bulged like worms under the skin, writhing as if alive. Blisters exploded into eyes. Eyes blinked, rolled, then melted away. More took their place. His mouth was the last human part to go. He tried to scream his own name, tried to beg for help, but his jaw split down the middle, tearing open like a blooming flower. Teeth erupted, too many, too jagged, forming rings inside rings of gnashing mouths. His tongue split into tendrils. His voice dissolved into a monstrous, gurgling howl that shook the air. The demon watching him laughed. The sorcerer who had branded him lifted his staff, chanting. Warp lightning danced around the mutating man, speeding the corruption. Darren clawed at the ground, leaving trails of blood and shredded earth as he tried to hold on to his humanity, but every thought dissolved into animalistic instinct. His mind cracked, memories shattered, faces of loved ones blurred, twisted, and finally disappeared. The warp was devouring him. Then came the final collapse. His body convulsed one last time, exploding outward in a bloom of flesh, bone, and screaming warp energy. When the light faded, the guardsman named Darren was gone. In his place stood, or rather twitched, a towering, malformed abomination. A chaos spawn, a mound of limbs and claws, mouths and eyes, constantly growing and retracting, mutating second by second in an endless cycle of living instability. It shrieked without reason, thrashed without thought, driven only by hunger, pain, and the will of the chaos god who had claimed him. There was no consciousness left, no identity, no soul, except a tattered echo caught in eternal torment. Where a man once fought for the Imperium, now only a mindless nightmare remained. A fate more terrifying than death. A fate reserved for the countless servants of chaos who failed to earn true demonhood. Most followers dream of glory, but chaos only gives one reward freely: damnation through mutation. A living nightmare called the Chaos Spawn.
The Eternal Madness Spawn. What happened after the transformation? When the last fragment of Darren's humanity dissolved into the warp, something new, something wretched, crawled out of the ruins of his soul. He was no longer a man, not a soldier, not even a servant of chaos. He had become a chaos spawn, a creature cursed with eternal madness, a living punishment crafted by the chaos gods themselves. A mind shattered beyond repair. Inside the monster, Darren's consciousness did not vanish instantly. For a few tortured moments, he was trapped behind layers of warped flesh and bone, screaming inside a body that no longer listened. His thoughts flickered like dying embers. Who am I? Why can't I move my own hands? Why is everything pain? Then the whispers of chaos rose again, not seductive this time, but mocking. They laughed as his memories melted. They laughed as his identity dissolved. They laughed as every emotion distorted into pure, primal terror. A body that never stops mutating. His new flesh rippled with constant motion. Limbs split and reformed. Eyes opened where no eyes should be. Bone spikes erupted and crumbled moments later. There was no stable shape, no final form. His very existence was a cycle of pain, mutation, pain, mutation. Every second of his existence was agony. Not enough to kill him, only enough to remind him he could never die the peaceful death he once feared. The hunger that never ends. The chaos gods replaced thought with instinct. Hunt, devour, rip, tear. He hungered for flesh, for souls, for anything living. He could no longer taste food or feel satisfaction. The hunger only grew with every kill. To the spawn, every creature was enemy, prey, threat, food, obstacle. There was no difference. Everything existed only to be destroyed. A toy of the chaos gods. The chaos sorcerer who had blessed him kept him on a warp chain, unleashing him like an attack dog upon battlefields. Sometimes the sorcerer would poke him with psychic needles just to watch how his body would twist and reform. Sometimes he would starve the monster for days, just to study how intensely it would hunt when freed. Sometimes he would simply stare and laugh, amused by the living tragedy he had created. To Chaos, the spawn was not a warrior or a servant. It was a joke, a punishment, a living reminder of Chaos's cruelty. The endless cycle of battle. Again and again, the Chaos spawn was hurled into war zones. Imperial trenches, Eldar craftworld pathways, Orc scrap cities, Tyrannid-infested jungles. Each time, the beast rampaged mindlessly, slaughtering anything that moved. Blades broke on its ever-morphing hide. Bolter rounds only made it mutate further. Flamers burned off flesh that instantly regrew in new, horrific shapes. There was no victory, no purpose. Only endless motion, endless mutation, endless madness. A death without meaning. Eventually, the creature was cornered by a squad of Adeptus Astartes. The Space Marines did not fear it. They had slain horrors far worse. As they crushed its skull and burned its remains, the spawn died without understanding anything. Not who it was, not what it had become, not why everything hurt. To them, it was simply an abomination. To Chaos, it was just another failed plaything. To the galaxy, it was forgotten the moment it died. The true horror. The true nightmare was not the monster's death. It was the life Chaos forced upon it. A life without identity. A life without purpose. A life without mind. A life of pure pain. A life of endless mutation. This was not ascension. This was not glory. This was not power. This was the fate of those who fall to the promises of Chaos. The eternal madness spawn.
The Chaos spawn that was once Doran lumbered across the battlefield of Karthos 9, its many limbs dragging through ash and broken armor. It no longer knew why it moved, only that something inside its warped flesh urged it forward. Hunger, pain, confusion, a single broken instinct: kill whatever lives. Its body twitched and reshaped itself every few seconds, bones dissolving, reforming, twisting in ways no natural creature could survive. Mac-slit eyes opened and closed across its skin, seeing thousands of directions, yet understanding none. Flesh bubbled as warp energy leaked from inside, like steam hissing out of a broken machine. It screamed, but the sound wasn't a voice. It was a chorus of agony, like metal grinding inside a throat not meant to speak. The forces of Chaos no longer cared for it. The sorcerer who had accelerated its transformation had already moved on. To him, the spawn was just another discarded experiment, another pathetic creature created for amusement and war. And so, it wandered, through burning trenches, over corpses, through the ruins of once proud imperial structures. Every few minutes, a memory tried to surface inside the creature. A flicker, a blurry shape, something like a child's face, a name it couldn't form, a feeling that almost resembled love. But the warp crushed the thought immediately, folding it into madness. There was only the beast now. The end comes swiftly. When the Ultramarines arrived, they encountered the creature near a collapsed manufactorum. The massive blue-armored warriors approached with calm precision. "Target identified," said Sergeant Kalion. "Chaos spawn! Execute with purity!" The creature lunged, not out of strategy, but blind instinct. The Marines opened fire. Bolter rounds tore into its flesh, exploding inside its body. Each blast blasted off limbs that instantly regenerated in wrong places. It clawed through the dust, roaring in fragmented voices. Then Brother Terrace stepped forward with a crackling power sword. End its suffering. In one clean, holy stroke, the blade sliced through the central mass of the creature's torso. Warp ichor sprayed like burning acid. The spawn convulsed, limbs flailing in 10 directions. Its final sound was half roar, half sob, and then silence. The flesh collapsed into a steaming pile that slowly stopped shifting. No one cared to examine it. No one wondered what it once was. No record was made of its name. It was listed simply in the after-battle report. 1-1 Chaos Spawn, terminated. What chaos took away forever? No one would ever know. The guardsman who once dreamed of returning home. The friend who once laughed around a campfire. The son who once promised he would survive the war. All of it was devoured by the warp. All of it erased. In the grim darkness of the far future, some fates are too cruel even to be remembered. And that is the truest horror. Not the pain, not the mutation, but to be forgotten, swallowed by chaos and erased from history.